Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to what will be the third installment about this JCB Midi CX backhoe loader that I purchased. This was started out as a Will It Run series, and well, if you've watched the previous episodes, you know that it does run, but it's still got issues. So let me catch you up on where we stand now. So the backhoe is now in my backyard, back home, where I have all of my tools easily accessible, so that's a big plus. So the last time we were talking about this backhoe, it was in the backyard at the property where I purchased it, and I had figured out that I was able to get it running if I would remove the injector pump assembly from the block, manually slide over the fuel shutoff lever, reinstall it, and then I could start the backhoe and it would run. But it would only run for a certain amount of time, and then depending on whether or not a different load was put on it or if the throttle was actuated, it might just die. And when it would die, there would be no amount of cranking that would restart it, and I would open up that injector pump again and find out that that lever had moved back to the no fuel position. So that's where we stand. I thought I had it licked after taking it out and kind of spraying a bunch of cleaner in some of the ports and stuff on there. It seemed to improve, but we still get a problem. Now, when I took it out the first time, and this is an important detail, when I took it out the first time, that lever was very sticky. It was clearly all gummed up with bad diesel fuel. So that's where, that's a major clue as to what's going on with the thing. Additionally, it's got a couple other problems that it had right from the get-go from just sitting for so long, which I'll have to address. But more importantly, when I initially was working on it, I was able to start it from the key. So you turn the ignition key on and the ignition comes on, and then when you turn it to the crank position, it would crank the motor. That stopped working. Early on when I got it running, I was testing the hydraulics, and I had raised the front end loader. And when I pushed the lever to drop the loader, I pushed it forward a little too fast. I wasn't used to how touchy the controls were. And the loader slammed down. And when it slammed down, the motor, shortly after that, it stalled, and then it wouldn't crank again. So my theory there is that when the loader slammed down violently, that a loose connection somewhere fell off, and it's probably on a safety switch. So I've got temporary wiring going to the starter solenoid so that I can crank the engine with my, got another key switch wired up just for cranking it. So I could turn it on at the ignition, normal ignition, and then crank it with the other one. The reason why you guys didn't see me loading this thing onto the trailer to get it home and all that is because the day that I went there to get this thing out of that property, unfortunately, it was raining, and it was raining pretty hard. So I couldn't have the camera out, and I just needed to work as quickly as possible. So you didn't miss much there. All I did was I took the pump out, slid the lever over, reinstalled the pump, started it up, drove it out to the front, had it stall while I was getting the ramp truck into position, my tilt ramp trailer that is, and had to take the pump out again, move the lever over, got it started, got it loaded onto the trailer, cinched down, drove it home. Got it here, unloaded it, had it die again. So it's just a continuing saga where I got to figure out what's going on with this thing. So we're going to pull the pump out today, and we're going to pull it completely out. Instead of just pulling it out slightly to move the lever over, we're going to pull it completely out, do some disassembly on the diesel injection pump, clean it really well, put it back together, and see if that doesn't solve the problem as far as starting. So just a quick little funny story. I ended up driving all the way down there to pick it up that day. I get all the way down there, which was over an hour drive to get there, about an hour and a half, only to find that I had forgotten the key at home. So that is why the instrument panel is opened up like that, because I had to remove the key switch and hotwire it. In addition to the problem with it shutting down when it's not supposed to, and the problem of it not wanting to crank from the key any longer, there's a couple other things that need to be addressed before it can be really used. Namely, this is the throttle pedal, and it's very hard to push, and it just sticks and it doesn't spring back. there's a return spring on the throttle, so I think this is just supposed to spring back on its own when you take your foot off, and it doesn't do that. So the shaft that this pedal rides on has something going on with it where it's kind of like really seized up or something. And I noticed the brake pedals also feel really stiff, and I'm wondering whether or not the same shaft might be the same shaft for both of these. No, it's not. So we'll have to look into that also. Once I get everything else straightened out, I'm going to want to give this thing a really good power washing. It's got a lot of this mildew, like pollen residue and everything that's kind of baked onto the parts. Kind of makes it look horrible. There's like all this lichen growth all over like the cylinders on the hydraulics, the boom, and it's really baked onto the hood. I had been starting this off of jump packs because that battery didn't seem to be wanting to take a charge, but all I had out there at the site was a trickle charger. So now that I've got it back here, I can try and maybe put a charge into that battery. I haven't found the year yet on that thing, so it might just be that it's a junk battery. But in the meantime, I picked up this nice Napa battery at the flea market. A guy had one. It's got a 2024 date code on it from beginning of this year, so that battery is only 4 months old, and I got it for 45 bucks, which was a steal. Takes a good charge, starts it no problem. The problem I ran into is the connections and the size of the battery. So as batteries go, this is kind of a little guy. You can see I can actually reach my hands right across the whole thing. So it's a short little battery, and it just fits in there nicely into that compartment in the front. So my frugal buy on this battery, first problem is the posts are reversed. The negative terminal on that battery is on the other side. So in order to get this negative terminal cable to reach the post, I had to flip the battery around, which means I have to push the battery back further. So I can't use the hold downs. There's actually just there's a clip on that side that flange on the bottom of that battery slides into, and then on this side there's a hold down with one bolt. The bolt goes through the frame of the tractor and sticks out the bottom, and it's exposed. It was extremely rusty, and of course it was no bueno. It just snapped. So I snapped that off, so I'm going to have to get the remainder of that bolt out of there to fix that if I want to mount the battery more correctly. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, these battery cable clamps on this thing are a little funky. I've got a vice grip on there holding that one on because, you guessed it, the bolt to tighten that snapped off. And of course, it can't just be a simple thing. It's got to be some kind of a funky clamp that JCB used on these. So I'm hoping that cable is going to be long enough so that when I remove the broken clamp, I'll be able to put a aftermarket clamp on there. And I don't really like those clamp-on clamps, so to speak, but it might be just the ticket to get out of this without it turning into just a major amount of grief for me. One other thing I want to address sooner than later is this hood. It's kind of a neat system as far as how to open this hood. It's got an intricate little hinge mechanism in there, and what has happened is I think they needed to be lubricated and they were sticking. I think somebody forced this hood at some point, and that side didn't want to fold like it's supposed to, and it bent it. So now when you go to close it, it doesn't line up correctly and it doesn't work correctly as it should. So at some point I will take that mechanism out. I will bend back all the bent up parts and make sure it's well lubricated, and that should make this hood work correctly. I also already have taken the liberty of ordering a new pre-fuel filter, a new main fuel filter, and a new air filter for this thing. Because those of you who watched my earlier video may remember that I found evidence of mouse activity inside the housing here. The filter kept them from being able to go into the intake, but as far as in the housing itself and that pipe that ran from here out to here was just full of garbage. And the filter itself just looked like it had been peed and pooped on by mice for a while. And the fact that I had all that gumminess in the injector pump tells me that, yeah, chances are those filters really need some attention. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with JCBs, this thing has a Perkins diesel, I believe, and it uses this funky little filter right here as a pre-filter. And then buried around the corner back there, you can just see kind of the orange JCB colors on it. That is the main fuel filter. And those are over here on the right side of the tractor where the injection pump is, right here. But the funny thing is, the tank is on this side with the filters, but the electric fuel pump that is mounted inboard to the frame is actually on the other side, on the left side. So the fuel actually gets pulled up from the tank, and I think it goes through the pre-filter, then goes back around the motor, through the pump where it's being drawn up, and then pumped up to the main filter, and then to the injector pump. Or it might be that it goes right from the tank to the pump, I'm not sure. The pump seems to be working fine, and when I do get it to run, it seems to run perfectly fine, and it moves the hydraulics well, and it'll, so I don't think that it's starving for fuel. I don't think that's my issue. But I did get those filters just because I do want to just change them, because I have no idea when the last time these filters were changed. So I'm getting to be kind of an expert at taking this pump out. Done it so many times now. Matter of fact, there's a bolt missing right there. That's because that was, for some reason, an Allen head cap screw, and all the other ones are either nuts on studs or bolts. There's 2 bolts in the bottom, and there's 3 nuts on studs on the top that hold it in. I couldn't get those injector lines to break free from the top of the injection pump, so when I was pulling the whole thing out, I was just basically undoing the lines at the other end and taking the lines with the pump assembly out complete. So let me get those nuts and bolts off. So I'm going to skip over the removal of the injector pump at this point because I already showed that in a previous video. If you are looking for how to take these pumps out, I'm going to post a separate video. You should be able to find it in my playlist, and that will show exactly how to remove and install this pump correctly. Well, just for the hell of it, I tightened up the high pressure lines at the injectors, and I'm just going to try and start it. So hopefully it'll bleed itself, and hopefully it's working correctly. A word of note, whenever you've messed with your injection pump like I did, you should be prepared for the unpleasant possibility of a runaway, where the engine starts and proceeds to just rise in RPM and go through the roof, at which point you need to shut it down, and you may find that your shutdown lever or control suddenly isn't working for some inexplicable reason. These are all possibilities that you have to contend with. So I've got the intake line off of the air filter housing right here. There's also a drain here with a rubber boot on it that keeps insects and critters from going up inside there. I'm going to pop that off, and what that's going to let me do is, in the event I have a runaway, I'll be able to put my hand over here right near the spinning fan and choke the engine off. Deprive it of air, oxygen, and we can stop the combustion, theoretically. So I'm going to start cranking it, and hopefully we'll start to see some smoke come out of the stack. Okay, that's not good. So I've either still got a problem here with the injector pump, or I just need to bleed the system because I completely drained those high pressure lines when I had it all apart. So there's a bleeder right here on top of the fuel filter. I opened that, quite a bit of air came out. Once fuel came out steadily, I closed that. Then I opened this bleeder right here on the pump. And same thing, fuel didn't come out right away. I waited until fuel started coming out and closed it up. Okay, still not getting any smoke. So I'm going to take those hard lines off again. Okay, I cracked all 4 of the lines again, cranked it, and then I started to see fuel coming out of a couple of the lines. So I reconnected all the lines and we'll try for another start. Doesn't sound like it's missing or anything. Oh, I need a fan belt. That's interesting. All these previous times that I started this thing, I never heard that belt screeching. And now she's screeching. Alright, but the good news is, when I use the manual shutdown lever, I can restart it. So that's a real good sign that I've solved the problem. So now I've topped off my oil. After being run a few minutes, make sure my oil level's right where it needs to be. I'm going to reinstall my fuel shutoff solenoid. Now when I turn the key on, I should hear that solenoid click. And it does. So now we'll put the key in the on position, start her up. And she shuts down from the key. Yay! All right, and it's restarting. So I would say we've got this major problem with this thing solved. So next time when we come back, I guess that's going to probably be part 4. I'll start attacking some of the other issues with it. I've got some regular maintenance I want to do. Like I said, I've already picked up new fuel filters, both the pre and post fuel filters. New air filter canister, the primary and secondary. It's like a 2-part deal. And I already did the oil filter and change on the motor. I want to do the hydraulic filter, and I'll take a look at the hydraulic fluid and make a judgment call on that. I might just do the filter for now. Hydraulic filters are pricey. I don't know why, but they just seem to be so much more expensive than oil filters. And I guess it just is the technology that's involved in maybe having to do more water separation or whatever. But I think for now, things are looking up. What do we got left to do? So if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. And please feel free to share this video. Take care. So it just died again.
It's doing the same thing. I'm right back to square one. No smoke coming out of the stack. I can almost guarantee you that if I pull that pump out and slide that lever over manually, it'll start up again. But what is going on with this thing?
I'm hoping at some point somebody who works on JCBs for a living stumbles upon this video, has mercy on me, and tells me what the heck I'm doing wrong.